Hi friends, I thought it would be fun to now do close-up palette comparisons to the newly released Natasha Denona Roxa, or Roxa in Portuguese if you wanted to pronounce the X with the sh sound. And I wanted to film an entirely separate video because there are several palettes to cover, such as a pastel, because actually there is one shade in the pastel palette that basically mimics the mint flip in the Roxa compact. Although I read through as many comments as I try to, I will respond to as many as I can, but I wanted to read through them first in order to capture people's feedback on the palette, several of which revolved around the fact that they wish that Roxa had more diversity, had a little more of that color, less of the lilac. And here's the thing. If you decide to buy into Natasha Denona palettes, there is a trade-off with that. The first trade-off being is with every palette that releases, Natasha also has in mind the other palettes in her collection. With that said, she might not include shades that you are dying to have in one MIDI because they probably are existing in another palette. And I think that's the beauty of Natasha Denona. The positive trade-off is if you wanted to steer a MIDI palette in another direction entirely, you could. For instance, this is Retro. I think Retro has some beautiful moments in here that will look stunning in the Roxa palette, right? Because Roxa is definitely a lot more vibrant, in my opinion, than the original Lila. But if you wanted this to appear more muted, a little more soft, take out some of the lilacs, maybe substitute in the mauves, and maybe other red tone purples like the plums and whatnot, you most certainly can do that. But I understand the disadvantage if you don't have other Natasha Denona midis, that you are stuck with what you have in a Roxa palette or any other palette you decide to buy from Natasha Denona and don't have others from her collection. But I wanted to start with a few comparisons that people brought up, and I will begin with Triochrome. Triochrome is not a MIDI, but someone had brought it up as a possible comparison. The thing with Triochrome is muted, is a lot more muted. You can see the purples here. Although purple, they're not exactly as vibrant as the purples you have in Roxa. And as an example, I can swatch Kinetic and I can swatch Tungsten. And you could just see from the swatches that Tungsten and Kinetic, although Kinetic appears violet and I think would probably be beautiful in Roxa, with these two colors, you could probably create something found in Roxa or Lila. I'll also swatch Manganese and Naga. Naga is kind of like Sweet Pea from Lila. This is Sweet Pea. You see, there's a little more violet versus Naga is a lot more, is lighter, and Manganese has a little more of like that dark violet hue. So sure, if you have Triochrome, you got your Roxa palette moment right there, but what you're missing are the dazzly shades that exist, the sparkled foiled formula, the wet effect formula, and now moving on to what I thought was an interesting comparison to bring up. Circo Loco. Circo only has Razzle Dazzle, which is this magenta metallic, and then you have Act, which is more of like a navy cobalt metallic, and then you have Magic, which, funny, this is probably the color that I was scrambling my brain over when filming Make Our Own Makeup by Mario Ethereal Eyes Moonlight palette. I could not for the life of me figure out which palette had a purple like the one that exists in Moonlight. I classified it as like a dark navy, but now looking at the retail photos, such as what's on Sephora, that blue appears more like this cobalt. And you most certainly can dip into Circo Loco if you wanted to create a similar blue moment, but I digress. Compared to Roxa, I mean, I don't see a comparison at all. That's just my opinion. You might have to stick to these two, or just apply Razzle Dazzle with Magic and come up with something similar. Joker is like a medium warm pink compared to Ceres. I think they're totally different. And of course, Natasha's beloved purple 28 pan. Now you can see that this quad right here, I guess I'll give you these 6. You have similarities that are found in Roxa as well. Except these colors, Natasha's old matte, where it's a traditional powder, but I would say, you know, not bad for considering this is an old palette, friends. And these tones here, again, a more traditional powder. This is a more traditional metallic shade. That's more of the eggplant part of the spectrum. And here is more of the orchid violet part of the spectrum. Again, you are limited to these 6 here, and then you have the other shades that expanded into the rest of the 28 pan palette. But if you got this one, for sure you got a Lila moment, right? Because I can compare that one matte that we swatched to Jacaranda. This is Jacaranda here, right? You see how much more color you get. And this is Natasha's new slip matte formula, that it is a powder matte, but look at the payoff. And I know this palette is significantly older than what I just purchased. I understand that completely. But even so, Natasha's matte traditionally from her palettes years ago were a lot softer and weren't as color rich. You most certainly can still use this matte, build it up as you like. But if you want an extra punch, my goodness, Jacaranda is going to give it to you. Same thing with Eclipse. Eclipse I liken to this shade, but look how much color you're getting from Eclipse. I just swatched that. Look at that. Compared to this matte here that I pulled from that pan, no way. I also wanted to bring in Dream. This is my personal comparison that I wanted to make because Dream has some magenta and warmer moments that are found in Lila that some people had wanted. I understand Lila is a little more of a diverse serving of shades, but like I said before, Natasha takes into consideration what she already has in her existing collection. So people say that she's redundant. If she includes all colors that she wanted and didn't consider the shade she already has, then I would say that's redundant. But you can clearly see that what you have in Lila kind of exists here. Risk to kind of mimic what's over here. Nurture to mimic Nude Mauve. But Nude Mauve is in my beloved retro, right? So we have Nude Mauve in the picture. And if you really wanted something like Nude Mauve, you could just pop this out and put it in Roxa, no problem. And also these warmer shades, Magnolia here, Cyclone, Dragon Bite, Purpure, Helio is also in retro. So listen, if you wanted those moments, you can make the swaps. I actually think there are a lot of great swapping opportunities that exist from retro that you most certainly can swap with Roxa, right? There's a lot of opportunity here. Again, I'm happy she didn't do a direct copy because you can Lilify it, if you will, by swapping in some shades from retro. And if you want to see that in action, I'll be happy to show, and I'll have my Lila on standby just so we can get an idea. And I also have my trusty nail magnets that this is what the nail magnets do. If you have magnetic nail polish, they shift the pigments in the polish to make this super cat eye effect going on. Just for reference, if you had no idea what I was using. And this is a dusty, crusty old Z palette that I still own, and happy that I did not trash it because I have something now to put these pans in. I want to keep Jacaranda because I think that is just an exceptional color and an exceptional new formula, because as you can see, the payoff is amazing. And as you will see in my 6-look video that I will work on after filming this one, and what you already saw in action in my first impressions review, make sure you check that video out up in the card above or down in the link in the description box below. I could take out Phoebe because people are like, why is this here? Phoebe, you know, I get it. You could use Phoebe to blend out the edges of any of the orchid violet shades in here, but we can certainly put in Nude Mauve from retro, right? We could put in Nude Mauve. Regal is gorgeous, right? It's your antique rose, a more simple metallic compared to the sparkling foils and whatchamacallit, wet effects in here. If we were to kind of pull from what exists in Lila already, I can invite maybe, yes, this is what I wanted to show. This duochrome from Pastel, okay? as I have said in the beginning, virtually mimics the flip for the compact. It's hard to see, but it's like that mint flip against that lavender base. So I'll put Duet right there where Regal used to be. I'm keeping Flutter. Flutter is a wet effect. We have to keep her in there, okay? Like, it's exceptional. And listen, compared to what Natasha has in her previous palettes, my goodness, the sparkle factor for Flutter is just outrageous. And let me shine a hard light on it because I know it's tough to see without the hard light. You see what I mean? Look at that. Blam, 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 blam. For our second row, I definitely want to keep Eclipse because that's one thing that, well, with Lila, the darkest shade you have is this one here, but it's this, let me see, I have to reference the, Layla is a metallic. It is a metallic. This one here, so much noise, but I rather have Eclipse because I think that is better performing. Stargirl is gorgeous. It's duochrome, I think is a lot of fun. Bolt, because of the swirly design, I'm just keeping it. Okay, now we're getting into the warmer shades. Heather we could take out, not because it's coral, but maybe we can invite a warmer metallic of some sort. I'm looking at Dream. I think my Dream might have a moment here. I'm looking at Risk to possibly replace Heather, or maybe something from here, Go-Go or Polly from Retro, or even Instinct. Remember Instinct from My Dream? This is a cream to powder, so it's not gonna have shine, but I don't know, maybe I'm just gonna drop it in there. And to substitute Cerise, which is French for cherry, and of course I'm mispronouncing, to then substitute something like, I was trying to find something like Dragon Bite. Dragon Bite is the duochrome in Lila. It's that maroon base with the teal flip, but the only one I'm thinking about, and my friend, shout out to my friend, Gods and Heroes username, who is helping me curate a new Lila, because I consult her when I have all these shade questions because she's an artist and I I trust her input with these inquiries. Now that I'm looking, we can most certainly just go in with Helio because Helio is already in Lila, and if you wanted to create more of a subtle moment, you can there. On to the last row. Now, another critique that was prevalent is the fact that Natasha included a lot of similar looking matte. 3 different like tone of lilacs, right? I think she wanted to see her new silky matte in action, friends, because again, as she had mentioned, purples are notorious for being dry and hard to blend. So the fact that she nailed these 6 shades in the new silky matte formula, she just wanted to plop them on. However, I completely understand if you're like, forget it, I don't want it. I can keep Sweet Pea because I took out Phoebe. Right, that was this shade here. In case you're like, I don't need another light lilac, okay? I'm fine, especially if you are deeper complected. That might be too ashy to blend out the edges with. Concord is beautiful. I think with the duochrome effect in there is definitely a keeper. Now, Velour we could take out, but I think Velour is gorgeous, is a beautiful lilac color, right, that I think necessary. So I'm gonna keep that there and maybe take out Sweet Pea and substitute in, maybe we could go the gold route because there is Magnolia in the original Lila, but maybe I can go in with, let's see here, Thrill, Spontaneous, even Babies. Let's see what Thrill is doing. I haven't swatched Thrill in quite some time. Oh, that's pretty. All right, I'm gonna throw it in there. Who cares? Yeah. So we got Thrill in there. Concord, Velour I'm keeping. Brink is that magenta. And then lastly, we have Orchid. Orchid is a lovely color. Is lovely matte. Lovely matte color. But compared to what we have going on, because we already have this guy here, Instinct from My Dream, maybe we don't need this anymore, and we can go in with like a I'm looking at Lila, seeing what that's giving. We already have like the icier lavender, we have the more nude or mauve leaning matte, we already have the magenta in here. Maybe I could go in with Amara. Amara from Retro. Because that well, you're like, well, that's silly, Alicia, because you took away Ceres. So why would you put Amara on? Well, because Ceres is more magenta. So if you wanted to go more like wine, you could. You most certainly could. Or you can switch out Amara and go in with Groove. Groove is like that burgundy. That'll be a lot of fun. I think that's something to consider. If you think this is too bright, right, you could take out Spontaneous or Thrill, excuse me, I'm making up stuff, and go in with Serenity from My Dream, which is a lot more subdued. And one of my most favorite shades, gosh, magnets are touching everything. And we could also take out something like Concord if you feel that's too bright, and perhaps go into what exists in the Love palette. Well, now that I'm looking at it, Pure Love is not that far from Concord, but if you just wanted to see that, I could put in Pure Love for Concord instead. And if you wanted to make this a lot more subdued, we definitely got to take out Bolt. Bolt cannot be in there. So instead, what we have to now maybe go in with Blind. Blind is from Love, but it's more of a straightforward silver shade, but maybe not necessary if we're already keeping Stargirl, and not include any red tones at all. So I'm taking out Instinct, putting that back in Dream, and I'm going in with Opart. Opart is like a taupe. Why not? Probably the next step, if we wanted to stick with this theme, is to take out Jacaranda, but I think Jacaranda in this setup will be the wild card shade. Now we could also take out this guy. I think originally this was Groove from Retro, and throw in something that's more along the lines of what we've already added. I'm looking at Lust, okay, from the Love palette, but might be too similar to Jacaranda. Trust is a lot drier and is a lot more muted compared to Jacaranda. That is the main difference. But if you want muted, then there you go. There's your muted. Look at this Roxa palette. Isn't this interesting? My goodness, this is like a Roxa palette probably more suitable for someone who was not feeling the vibrancy of Roxa and was like, listen, I like purple, but not that much. I just need a dose of it here and there. But this is the beauty of Natasha Denona palettes. This is the reason why I think she releases a lot of midis. And when I say a lot, maybe 3 a year at most. But the amount of fun that you have, I think, is just, you can't help but get stoked off making swaps and steering a palette to what you think is more suitable to your taste. And I know it might be cumbersome to pull out all these palettes, but when you think about it, that's why they're magnetic. And I most definitely would recommend that you get a magnetic wand of some sort so that these swaps are easier to manage and to pull off. All in all though, despite the criticisms, not just from you guys, some of you, but also ones that I can come up with for sure, I think Roxa is a magnificent addition to what we have already in the collection. What a lovely substitute. And I think it was a great risk that Natasha took in releasing a holiday palette such as Roxa that doesn't exactly speak to traditional holiday norms, if you will. I know some of you has said that it's one note, but I like that it's one note. Part of the reason why I adore Xenon, how it's completely and utterly committed to that theme. And Natasha did her very best in expanding upon it. And with all that, I hope that these swatches helped inspire you to make your own Roxa palette, or even if you choose not to buy it because some of you said this is an easy pass, and that is completely fine. That maybe if you already have Natasha Denona palettes, you can make your own Roxa. What's your interpretation of purple? What does that include? Will you go more vibrant? Will you go more desaturated? I mean, who knows? The possibilities are endless. But thank you for joining me on this hypothetical palette swatch and just taking into considerations some of your feedback points, your criticisms, your praises, everything all in between. For this, I think it's more so people thought that she could have gone one way or the other, considering the fact of how many purple, wine, magenta, mauve, taupes, roses that she already has in her collection. Why not make the swaps and see if we can bring another vision back to life? So that is it, family. Thank you for joining me on this video. Let me know if you had any other ideas in mind for Roxa. I'll be more than happy to hop back on here. And with that said, I'll see you all again soon.